Well, the new year arrives tomorrow, and so do a number of new laws. Fox 12's Mackenzie Richmond joins us live with a look at some of the changes coming in 2025. Good morning, Mackenzie.
Yeah, good morning. There are a number of new laws going into effect tomorrow here in our state of Oregon, all in an effort to make our state a cleaner, safer, and more affordable place. But with those changes, there's a few key changes I want to highlight that could potentially impact your day-to-day life, starting tomorrow, of course. Now, first and foremost, Senate Bill 1553 aims to stop drug use on public transit. So as of tomorrow in Oregon, the definition of interfering with public transportation will expand to include the use of drugs and makes it a Class A misdemeanor, which in many cases would actually open up access to state-funded treatment for those convicted of the crime. Another important new Oregon law to highlight that goes into effect tomorrow is House Bill 4147, which will allow schools to install cameras to record drivers who don't stop for school buses with safety lights on. Other laws going into effect in Oregon will incentivize emission reductions, promote clean energy, and lower the cost to repair electronic devices. And Washington also has some significant changes that come with the new year tomorrow. One of the most notable is that when the clock strikes midnight, the state's minimum wage will increase to $16.66 per hour, which is up more than 2% from 2024. So overall, some big changes coming to the Pacific Northwest when the clock strikes midnight this evening for 2025. Reporting live, Mackenzie Richmond for Good Day Oregon.
All right, Mackenzie, thank you.